शलाकय चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरुं वैष्णवांश श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगण रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपदान् सहगणा ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च नम ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिन्निति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देश तारिणे। हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यस्य कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. So welcome to the Srimad Bhagavatam thematic series 3. We have been discussing the 6 answers of the sages of Sutta Goswami to the questions of the sages of Naimisharanya. And these answers are in brief in the first canto, second chapter, and the third chapter. And up till now, we have come to the third chapter, 30th verse. We have covered the 30th verse. We are on the 34th verse, I guess. But I'll just summarize. Sut Goswami begins to answer in the second chapter. Vyas narrates that being very pleased, Sut Goswami starts answering by thanking them. And then he offers his respectful obeisances to Sukade Goswami, those two famous verses, Yam Pravarjantam and Yaswanubhavam. And then he offers his obeisances to the scripture, Narayan Namaskritya, Naranchaiva, Narottamam. And Munayo Sadhu Prashtoham. He thanks the sages and then starts answering question 1. Yat Shreya. The highest Shreya is practice sadhana bhakti, by which you can get sadhya bhakti, parodharma. And varnashram is not parodharma, he proves. And then the whole series of discussion goes on with how this bhakti, beginning from Shraddha, you can attain prema. And that's why atho va kavayo nityam bhakti paramaya muda vasudeva bhagavati kurvanti atma prasadanim. So this answers question 2, that what is the essence of all scriptures by which the Atma can be completely satisfied? So after answering this, then the object of devotion is Bhagavan and no other, not Shiva, not Brahma, nor any of the demigods. So from verses 23 to 29, he proves that, and verses 28 and 29 are very famous. Vasudeva Paraveda, Vasudeva Paramaka. That proves that. And then from 30 to 34, especially 30 to 33, in principle, how the Lord, that Saha Vasudeva, uh, through his expansion as Purusha Avatar, uh, by the law of causality, cause and effect, creates this universe. And he enters into this universe, and as a Paramatma, he controls this universe. So the Purusha avatars in principle are discussed in this verse. And verse 24 answers the question that this Purusha, the Lord as Leela avatars, Leela Anurato, Bhavatena Bhavena, Lokan Vai Bhavana, Tir Devya Naradeshu. He takes different forms and Leela Anurakto, he performs these various pastimes. Why? To reclaim the souls who are in pure goodness. So, this is the purpose of the Lord's incarnation, which is answer to question 3. And question 4, how does the Lord create this universe with the Purusha avatars? That has been explained in verses 30 to 33 of the second chapter. Now, in the third chapter, Sutta further explains that Leela Anuratto, what are the pastimes the Lord performs? The first pastimes the Lord performs is the pastimes of the creation through the Purusha avatars. So that is discussed in verses 1 to 5. And then, which are the Leela avatars? The 22 incarnations, beginning from verse 26 to 27. And 28 is a very important verse. Ete Cham Sakala Pumsa, Krishnastu Bhagwan Swayam. We spent almost one class on that. I think 2 classes we spent on that. And having answered, what is the Shruti Falla? Janma Goyata. Janma means the birth. Janma Guyam Bhagavato. Etat Prayato Nara. Sayam Prata Granan Bhaktya. Dukkha Grama Vimuchate. A person who chants with devotion and glory, the glories of the Lord's appearance, which are Guhya, mysterious, becomes free from all sorrows. So after narrating the Shruti Phala, in the last class, we discussed this second last section, which is coming up from verses 30 to 39, that the imaginary material forms of the Virat Purusha and the Jiva are not counted as incarnations, and Sut Goswami is explaining the principles why it is not counted. Because the forms Lord, Etad Rupam Bhagavato, he Arupasya. It is not Arupasya means it doesn't have any form. No, Arupasya means it is not having a material form, but what form? Chidatmana. It is having a spiritual form. Maya Guner Virichatam. But the form, composed of Maya beginning with Mahatattva and all the elements, Mahadadibi, whose basis is the Paramatma, whose basis is this material world, which is composed of these material gunas, beginning from Mahatattva, with Paramatma at its basis, is a material form of the Lord, Maya Guner, whereas the Lord's form is spiritual, and that's why it is not uh, included in the incarnations. So the Paramatma feature is not there in the spiritual world. It is a manifestation only in this creation. So the universal form composed of matter is not counted among the avatars such as Matsya and Kurma, composed of Vishuddha. We saw Prabhupada's commentary and Vishwanath Chakravarti's commentary on this. Then he gives an example. Yatha nabasi megavoho renurvar parthivo nile evam drishtari drishtatvam aropitam abuddhavi. Just like the unintelligent people attribute clouds to the sky. The sky is very cloudy today, you say, the sky is invisible, you cannot see it. But or the sky is very blue, you say. And the particles of dust are attributed to air. You say the air is very dusty, when the wind blows and the air, carries the dust particles, and you say, you cannot see the air. But because of the dust particles, you say that the air is windy. So similarly, the enlightenment being to see the universe, the visible form of the Lord as the Lord. So those who have no knowledge of the transcendental form are told to meditate on that which is visible. They are told to focus their attention on the power extension of the Lord, which is this universe, the Shakti of the Lord. The Shakti and the Shaktiman are non-different in one sense. So we also discussed the commentary of Prabhupada and Vishwanath Chakra Thakur on this verse. And then he concludes, Ata param yad avyaktam avyuda guna brahmitam adrishta shuta vasutvat sajivo yat punarbhava. And even superior to this gross universal form is that invisible, devoid of any specific bodily parts, since it cannot be heard. So the subtle form also is, material. It is imaginary because it is made of temporary material elements, the subtle body. And that's why the jiva, sa jivo yat punarbhava. And that is the instrument of the jiva taking birth in this material world. So after proving this, now further, uh, we saw Vishwanath Chakravarti's commentary on this. Now, how do we realize that we are different from the gross and subtle bodies? So, how does we realize? This verse speaks on. So, today we will start our discussion from verse 33. Yatre me sad asadrupe prati samvida avidyayatmani krite iti tad Brahma Darshanam. When the gross and the subtle material forms, yatre me sad asad rupe. So the gross form was spoken in verse 30. The subtle form was spoken in verse 32, which are impositions on the soul in ignorance. Avidya Atmani Krite. It is a ignorance on the Atmani soul are removed prati siddhe by the realization of devotees. Swasamvida, one can realize Brahman. Iti yat tad Brahma darshanam. If this is actually all material, how can we see Brahman? This verse answers. So this verse answers how we can see Brahman. Prabhupada purport is very, very insightful. The difference between self-realization and material illusion is to know that the temporary or illusory impositions of material energy in the shape of the gross and subtle bodies are superficial coverings on the of the self. So these are superficial coverings on the self. The coverings take place due to ignorance. Avidyaya atmani krite. Such coverings are never effective in the person of the personality of Godhead and also to the liberated soul. The Lord doesn't have any gross body or subtle body. The Lord's body is completely made of Satchidananda, eternity, bliss, and knowledge. It is composed of that. Knowing this convincingly is called liberation or seeing the absolute. Samvida. Samvida means to know it. Samvyak rupena vida. Complete understanding of it. Complete, deep conviction about it. So conviction is a very deep word. As long as you're not deeply convinced at the level of the soul, uh, you will still have, and you'll be tested when the gross body is in trouble or the subtle body is disturbed, like the mind is disturbed. Do we realize we are the soul? It's very difficult. So we have to be situated on the transcendental platform, and we are convinced by realization that I am different from the gross and subtle bodies. This means that perfect self realization is made possible by adoption of godly or spiritual life. So, how do we attain this self realization? By adoption of a spiritual life or a godly life. Now, Prabhupada gives a very, very interesting definition of self realization. I don't know whether I discussed this verse in the last class, but anyway, we'll discuss it. I think after I came to this point, I felt that I have discussed this verse in the last class also. Anyone remembers? And raise your hand. Virendra Yadav Prabhuji, have we discussed this verse?
Yes, Prabhu, we had discussed.
Ah, yes, that's what now. Maybe the next verse we did not discuss, so I'll just briefly touch upon it. So, self realization means becoming indifferent to the needs of the gross and subtle bodies and becoming serious about the activities of the self. We become indifferent to the needs of the body and even the indifference of needs of the mind. And I gave Prabhupada's example when he was Chippywada, he was going back and forth for the printing and he was proofreading and typing the Bhagavatam. He used to forget to take his meal. So that is self realization. So we have discussed this, so I will not go in detail. These forms are removed by realization of the Lord's devotees. Why are these two forms not situated in the Lord? These forms are imposed on the jiva by ignorance and are not situated in the Lord. And this is the verse from the, I think, third canto it is mentioned. With the removal of these two material forms, one can see Brahman. So as long as these two forms are not removed, we cannot realize the Brahman. And now, how the both the gross and the subtle impositions on the jiva are due to the material energy, the Maya Shakti. So how does Maya Shakti or when does Maya Shakti withdraw or influence? Because as long as Maya Shakti doesn't withdraw or influence, we cannot realize Brahman. So how does it happen? This verse answers. Yaddesho parata devi maya vaisharadi matihi sampanne veti vidur mahimni sve mai mahiyate. When Maya or ignorance, Devi Maya, weakens, yadde esho parate, the Lord bestows his mercy on the jiva. Vaisharadi mati. The jiva becomes endowed, sampanna, with this treasure. The wise understand that Eveti Vidur, being situated in this glorious position, Swamahimni, this person is worthy of worship. Mahiyate. So only when Maya weakens, then the Lord bestows his mercy on the Jiva, and the Jiva Sampanna becomes endowed with spiritual potency, and he is situated in a transcendental position, and such person who is situated on a transcendental position is worthy of worship. Let's see Prabhupada's commentary. Because the Lord is the absolute transcendence, all of his forms, names, pastimes, attributes, associates, and energies are identical with him. So here Prabhupada is going to focus on energies because Maya energy has to be withdrawn. And Maya energy is identical with him. Shakti, Shaktiman, Abhinna, Abheda. There's no difference. His transcendental energy acts according to his omnipotency. The Lord is omnipotent. The same energy acts as his external, internal, and mandal energies, and by his omnipotency, he can perform anything and everything through the agency of any of these above energies. So the Lord can perform anything and everything with his energies. Now, this is very inconceivable for us sometimes. Like, I'll give you one example to understand. There is the engineer in the powerhouse, and in the powerhouse, he's generating maybe 10 million watts of energy. And this energy is transmitted in the city, and there is one house, and there is this bulb which is 10 watts. So the energy transmitted from the powerhouse, the energy actually produced in the powerhouse is 10 million watts, but the energy the bulb requires is only 10 watts. And through the distribution of the energy, that particular 10 watts of energy is given to the bulb and the bulb grows. And this bulb is compared now to the Jiva and the powerhouse where the engineer is the supreme personality of Godhead. But the energies are non-different from the Lord. So if you happen to even distribute energy, transmit energy through that bulb you pass energy, say 100 watts or 1000 watts, the bulb will burst out, right? But the Lord, by his omnipotency, can manifest 1 lakh watts of energy in that jiva, in that bulb, and nothing will happen to it. Nothing will happen to it because it is being endowed by the Lord's potency. So that is the example. He can turn the external energy into internal by his will. Therefore, by his grace, the external energy which is employed in illusioning the living beings who want to have it subsides by the will of the Lord in terms of the repentance and penance of the conditioned soul. Mark this point. Very, very important point. As we chant the holy name, and why we are not able to chant many number of rounds? Because of the influence of the external energy. And we chant with deep repentance. Oh my Lord, I'm not able to put my heart in the holy name. And you cry out deeply from the heart. So then, by the terms of repentance and penance, the Lord sees that he's sincere and he wants admittance. So the Lord, by his potency, subsides the influence of the external energy. And the very same energy then acts to help the purified living being make progress on the path of self-realization. So that external energy which was pulling you towards the external world, the senses were pulling you out to the sense objects to enjoy. When the influence subsides, the same mind turns inwards towards self-realization. The example of electric energy is very appropriate in this case, in this connection. So Prabhupada is giving the example of the electric energy. The expert electrician can utilize the electric energy for both heating and cooling by adjustment only. So it is that one energy, when it passes through something, it heats. That same energy, when it passes through a refrigerator, it cools. So Prabhupada is giving this example. I give the example of that bulb in the powerhouse where, although high amount of wattages pass through that bulb, still the bulb will sustain. Similarly, the external energy which now bewilders the living being into continuation of birth and death is turned into internal potency by the will of the Lord to lead the living being to eternal life. When the avidya is destroyed, then the vidya potency starts manifesting. And here, in the Jnana and the Ashtanga also there is the avidya and vidya potency, but they both belong to the Maya potencies, Maya Shakti only, because these paths are in the mode of goodness, the Jnana and the Ashtanga. But here Vidya means the Bhakti Shakti. The Bhakti Shakti in the form of the Ladini and the Samvit Shakti, they descend in the heart. And automatically the Maya Shakti is subdued or subsided. When the living being is thus graced by the Lord, he is placed in his proper constitutional position to enjoy eternal spiritual life. Very, very important verse and important commentary. Let's see Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Vaisharadi refers to the Lord who is skillful, Visharada, to understanding what is beneficial for his devotees. So Vaisharadi Mati, Visharada. Visharada means Lord is very skillful. Oh, this devotee, now the example, how the external energy acted as an internal energy is when Vidura was very heavily, chastised by Duryodhan. Very heavy statements he made. Vidura took this as the act of the Lord. So that it was an external energy, but he took it as internal and he gave up everything, renounced and went on a pilgrimage. So that's how the Lord acts for the benefit of his devotees. He thinks, let this jiva see me. So only when the Lord desires, we can see the Lord. If the merciful desire of the Lord arises, then he acts in this way. Ultimately, we have to attain the Kripa Shakti of the Lord. There is no other way. And then this famous verse, from the Mundaka Upanishads, and even in the Shvetashar Upanishads, it is there. And Prabhupada also quotes this in the Bhagavad Gita, I think in 7.7 commentary. Yes, no, this one. Where does Prabhupada quote this? Let me see. It's a very, very, very important. This is there in the Manduk Upanishads and even in the Shetashar Upanishads. Where does Prabhupada quote it? Katha Upanishads, Manduka Upanishads, so many places it is there. Katha Upanishads. Yes. Yes, Katha Upanishad, not the Svetasha Upanishads. Nayam Atma Pravachanena Labhyo na Medaya na Bahuna Shrutena va. Shrutena. Yam eveshi vrinoti tena labhyas taseva Atma vi vrinoti Tanum Swam. I'm not able to see clearly because there is problem with my specs. So this is from Manduk Upanishads. Even in the Svetashar Upanishads, it is there. As far as I remember. So many times this verse is quoted that. Where is the translation of this? The translation means. Many times Prabhupada has quoted this. The Lord is obtained only by one whom he himself chooses. To such a person, he manifests his own form. Manduk Upanishads is there, but yeah, Yasyadeva Parabhakti, it's very also similar. The Supreme Self cannot be reached by argumentation. Naham Atma Pravachanena. Or applying one's independent brain power. Na Medaya. Meda means intelligence. Or by studying many scriptures. Bahuna Shutenava. Rather, he alone can achieve the self whom the self chooses to favor. To that person, the self reveals his own true personal form. So, Katha Upanishads, Mandaka Upanishads. So, Prabhupada has quoted this many times, and this is a very, very important verse. Or Vaisharati Mati can mean the person who thinks of the Lord. The Mati of the Lord is always, fixed in Krishna. Thus, the first line means if Maya Devi withdraws her influence, then the Lord favors the devotee, or when Maya withdraws her influence, the Jiva thinks of the Lord. Now, when we are under Maya's influence, the thoughts are material. But when Maya withdraws her influence, then the thoughts become spiritual. And Vaisharadimati, when we are always thinking of the Lord, then the Lord will bestow mercy and reveal his form. The person thinking in this way or endowed with the Lord's mercy is well furnished, sampanna, whereas others are poor. The wise understand that that he who is situated in this glorious position, Swa Mahimni, is worthy of worship. Mahiyate. So one who is a self-realized soul is worthy of worship. That's the Madhyamadikari. Okay, if you have any questions, you can raise your hand. Otherwise, I'm just going to continue with the next discussion, next verse. Evam janmani karmani hi akartur ajanasya cha varnante sma kavayo veda guhyani hritpatahe. Thus rejecting the two versions of the spiritual form. Evam. So now the conclusion is built up after verse 30. The wise glorify the highest subject of the Vedas. Varnanti sma kavayo. The birth and activities of the Supreme Lord. Janmani karmani. Janma Guya Bhagavato. One who recites this. So then he will vimuchate. And these imaginary forms of the gross and the subtle Virat Purusha, or of the gross and the subtle bodies of the Jiva, they are imaginary, and now it is proved that we should only glorify the Janma Karma Cha Me Divyam of the Lord. who resides in the hearts of all living beings. Ritpate, unlike the universal form doesn't reside in the heart. Who has no material birth and no material activities, unlike the jiva. He akartur ajanasya. Rejecting the two material forms, the learned glorify the unborn and the inactive Lord, confidential even to the Vedas. Prabhupada. Both the Lord and the living entities are essentially all spiritual. Therefore, both of them are eternal and neither of them has birth and death. So the Lord doesn't have birth and death. The Jiva also doesn't have birth and death. Na jayate na mriyate va kadachin. The difference is that the so-called births and disappearance of the Lord are unlike those of the living beings. The living beings who take birth and then accept death are bound by the laws of material nature. So this is the difference between Lord's birth and death, or the birth and death of the living being. It is happening under the laws of material nature, but ajopi san avyatma bhutanam ishvaro api san prakritim swam adhishtaya sambhavami. No. Ajopi san avyatma bhutanam ishvaro api san prakritim swam sambhavami atma mayaya. Something like that it is. Third line I'm not able to recollect. Ajopi. This is a very important verse, Bhagavad Gita 4.6. Although I am Aja, Ajopi san avvayatma. My atma, my body doesn't deteriorate because it is bhutanam ishwaropi san. Prakritim swam adhishtaya. Correct. Sambhavami atma mayaya. It happens because of my internal energy. So this is the point also Prabhupada is making here. Happens. But the so-called appearance and disappearance are not actions of material nature, but are demonstrations of the internal potency of the Lord. So this is again paraphrasing Bhagavad Gita 4.6 only. They are described by the great sages for the purpose of self-realization. It is stated in the Bhagavad Gita by the Lord that his so-called birth in the material world and his activities are all transcendental. 4.9 of the Bhagavad Gita. And simply by meditating on such activities, one can attain self-realization of Brahman and thus become liberated from material bondage. Janma karma cha me divyam evam yo veti tatvata tektva deham punarjanma. We are caught up in the cycle of birth and death. And by reciting the glories of the Lord, we become free from it. So definitely, whom we are glorifying, he is free from it. That's logical. In the Shrutis, it is said that the birthless appears to take birth. I don't know which verse from the Upanishads Prabhupada is referring. Aja, I don't know which verse. We'll have to find out. The Supreme has nothing to do but because he is omnipotent, everything is performed by him naturally, as if done automatically. This here is referring to the Shvetashwar Upanishads. Parasya Shaktir Vivide Shuyate. As a matter of fact, the appearance and disappearance of the Supreme Personality Godhead and his different activities are all confidential even to the Vedas. Prabhupada is quoting Veda Guya Ritapate, Veda Guyani. It is Veda Guyani. Yet they are displayed by the Lord to bestow mercy upon the conditioned souls. Anugraya Bhaktanam, which is there in the Bhagavatam verse. We should always take advantage of the narrations of the activities of the Lord, which are meditations on Brahman in the most convenient and palatable form. Because the Lord comes in the human form and performs human-like activities. So they're more palatable. We can relate to them. Vishnacharya Thakur. Evam means thus rejecting the two material forms. Although the Lord is not born, he is also born. According to the Shruti text, Ajaya Mano Bahuda Bijayate. Not being born, the Lord appears as Mani, Mahanarayan Upanishads. Prabhupada is referring to this in his commentary. So you can note down that from the Mahanarayan Upanishad. The Lord is not the doer, but performs actions. According to Shruti text, Na chasya karyam karanam cha vidyate. The Lord has no senses and no body. Svetashara Upanishad. So this is that same verse which I quoted, Parashashaktir. The last line is being quoted here. And as well, Shruti says, Swabhaviki Jnana Bala Kriyacha. By his nature, the Lord's actions are endowed with knowledge and strength. Again, the same verse, Svetashara Upanishad 6.8. But one who sees birth and actions of the jiva, who actually has no birth and no material actions. That is true. But the jiva's birth and actions are related to matter, and the Lord's birth and actions are without relation to matter at all. Prabhupada also brought out this point. This is the difference. These facts about the Lord's birth and actions are established in all the Vedas because they are the highest, most excellent truths. Veda Guhyani. So the philosophical treatise of the Upanishads, where the absolute is given very terse understanding, and the Smriti text like the Lord's pastimes given in the Bhagavatam and the Puranas, like Lord Ram's Leela in the Ramayana and all, they are more confidential and the highest and most excellent truths. This means that the facts about the Jiva are different, big inferior, because his birth and actions are related to matter. The Gita also says, Janma karma cha me divyam evam yovati tatvata. Prabhupada also quoted this. Referring to the Lord as Ritapate, the Lord in the heart, Paramatma, indicates that the universal form is not considered among the avatars since it does not reside in the heart. Prabhupada also made this point. Okay, any questions up till now about these two verses which we discussed? Yes, Priya Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, I just want to understand the correlation between these two statements. One is we said Veda is the highest composed, like, and then somewhere in 1335 note down, it says rejecting these two material forms, the learned glorify the unborn and the inactive Lord, confidential even to Vedas. Can you just throw light on that? Confidential even to Vedas?
Yes, the Lord's pastimes are, very, very, the Vedas is a very vast body of knowledge. That's why in the Brahma Samhita it is said, Vedeshu Durlabam Adurlabam Atma Bhakto. Now, if you go to the entire body of Vedas and try to find out bhakti, you'll not find so easily. Because most of the portion of the Vedas, in fact, 96% of the Vedas deals with Karma Kand, and only a small portion deals with self-realization in the form of Jnana Kand in the Upanishads. But Bhakti is still more confidential. But actually, the whole Vedas is ultimately, only pointing out to Bhakti. Vedeshu sarver aham, no, Vedescha sarver aham eva vedyo, Vedanta krit veda videcha. By all the Vedas, I am to be known. But in the Vedas, there are so many things. You say, where is Krishna here? You will not find him. Just like in that 100 rupee note or a 500 rupee note, there is that thin line which is invisible. You have to, put it before light and see. But that is the essence of that note. Similarly, so many things are given in the Vedas, vast body, but the essence is like that thin line. And that is everything. So the Vedas only speak about bhakti, but it is very difficult. And that's why Brahmaji is saying Vedeshu Durlabam Adurlabam Atma Bhakto. So that's what it means. Any other questions? Okay, so let's complete this section. Savaidam Vishwam Amogalīlah Srijantavatyatya sajjatesmin Bhuteshu Chantarhita Atmatantra Shad Shadvargikam Jigrati Shadguneshah. The server, independent Lord Atmatantram, who has spotless pastimes, Amogalila, who has entered into all beings, Bhuteshu Chantarhita, creates, maintains, and destroys. Srij Avati Atti. This universe, Idam Vishwam, being the master of the six senses, Sadgunesha, he contacts the six sense objects, Shadvargikam, sound, touch, form, taste, smell, and thought, without being affected. Na sajjate asmin. So this Lord, who is spotless, who has entered the all living beings and who creates, maintains, and destroys through the Purusha avatars, he is the master of the six senses and he contacts sense objects, but still he doesn't get affected because he's transcendental. The prime difference, Prabhupada, between the Lord and the living entities is that the Lord is the creator and the living entity are the created. Here he is called as the Amog Leela, which indicates that there is nothing lamentable in his creation. The Lord creates this universe and he doesn't lament. We also create in the form of, for our enjoyment, children, but the children become a source of harassment for us. Those who create disturbance in his creation are themselves disturbed. He is transcendental to all material afflictions because he is full with all six opulences, namely wealth, power, fame, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation. And thus he is the master of the senses. Third Gunesha. He creates these manifest universes in order to reclaim the living beings who are within them suffering threefold miseries, maintain them, and in due course annihilates them without being the least affected by such actions. Sant Tukaram, I don't know, in one of his Abhangas, he says, you know, Veda, you're like what kind of a person you are? You make this pot and you break it. You make this pot, you break it. So this creation, he creates this beautiful creation and he destroys it, you know, completely unaffected by it. If we build a house with a lot of wealth and that house is demolished, by the government, how much we get afflicted. He is connected with the material creation very superficially as one smells odor without being contacted with the odorless article. Although he contacts the sense objects, Shadvargikam, but he's Sadgunesha, he's unaffected. Non-godly elements, therefore, can never approach him despite all endeavors. Vishwanath Chakra Thakur. There are many other remarkable qualities of the Lord. First, his unlimited power is described. Far off, the Lord senses the six objects, Sadvarigam, but is not attached to them. Why? He is the master of the six senses, Sadguneshi. Or he is the master of the six auspicious qualities, Aishwarya, Veera, Yasha. Prabhupada quoted this. Thus he experiences happiness arising from these six qualities. Text 37. If you have any questions on this verse, we can take up. Okay, text 38. Now, further, what are the remarkable qualities of the Lord is mentioned in text 38. न चास्य कश्चिन्निपुनेन धातुर avati jantu कुमनीषियावती नामानि रूपानि मनोवचोभिः संतन्वतो natacharyam ivagya. The falsely intelligent person, who manishya jantu, with skill in gyan or yoga, and skill in gyan and yoga, cannot understand avati using their mind and words. Manovachavi, the pastimes, uti, names and forms, namani rupani of the Lord, who distributes these santanvato whenever he descends. Na chasya kashyan dhatur. Just as an ignorant person, ivagya, cannot appreciate the performance of an actor, natacharyam. So the jnanis here are called as kumanishi and the yogis because with their mind and words, because the mind is material and whatever the words are coming, they are also coming from the tongue which is material. They cannot understand the transcendental forms, names, and attributes of the Lord. And he performs these pastimes and the great incarnations like Vyasdev write it and spread it. Ramayana is spread all over the world. Even in many countries, Ramayana is there. They cannot understand, just like an ignorant person cannot understand, you know, the performance of an actor. Like a Bharatnatyam, different bhavas are being, demonstrated, but because they don't understand the science of this language of emotions, what they are conveying, so he's not understanding what is happening. So similarly, the Lord's pastimes, are like that. Prabhupada. No one can properly describe the transcendental nature of the absolute truth. Therefore, it is said that he is beyond the expression of the mind and speech. And yet, there are some men with poor fund of knowledge who desire to understand the absolute truth by imperfect mental speculation and faulty description of his activities. So, these are the Gyanis and the Yogis. To the layman, his activities, appearance and disappearance, his names, his forms, his paraphernalia, his personalities are all things in relation to him are mysterious. There are two classes of materialists, namely the fruity workers and the empiric philosophers, the karmis and the gyanis. The fruity workers have practically no information of the absolute truth, and the mental speculators are after being frustrated in fruity activities, turn their faces towards the absolute truth and try to know him by mental speculation. And for all these men, the absolute truth is a mystery, as the jugglery of a magician is a mystery to the children. Being deceived by the jugglery of the Supreme Being, the non devotees who may be very dexterous in fruitive work and mental speculation are always in ignorance. So both the karmis and the jnanis are ignorant. With such limited knowledge, they are unable to penetrate into the mysterious region of transcendence. The mental speculators are a little more progressive than the gross materialist or the fruity workers, but because they are also within the grip of illusion, they take it for granted that anything which has a form, a name, and activities is product of Maya. Avajananti mamuda manushum tanum ashrita param bhavajananto mama bhuta maheshwara. For them, the Supreme Spirit is formless, nameless, and inactive. And because such mental speculators equalize the transcendental name and form of the Lord with mundane names and forms, they are in fact in ignorance. So they know the absolute truth has no name, you know, no form, no qualities. It's just all pervading Brahman. With such poor fund of knowledge, there is no access to the real nature of the Supreme Being. As it is stated in Bhagavad Gita, the Lord is always in a transcendental position, even when he is within the material world. So, where in the Bhagavad Gita it is stated the Lord is always in transcendental, even when he is within the material world? Anyone can quote which verse? Which verse you can quote this proper saying? The Lord is in a transcendental position. Vinita Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Prabhuji, I'm not aware of it. I'm sorry.
Gita Mataji.
Hello.
Prabhuji don't know.
Don't know. Subrat Prabhuji. No idea. Ravi Kant Prabhu.
No, Prabhuji, I don't know.
Okay. Yes, Priya Mataji.
Prabhuji had raised my hand, but later on I realized I may not be correct. Is it 14.27 Brahmano hi Pratishtha?
Brahmano hi Pratishtam. No. Again, it is the same verse which I quoted just a few minutes back. Birendra Yadav Prabhuji. Okay. Let us see which. Yes.
Janma karma cha me divyam evam yoget.
Janma karma cha me divyam. Yes, that also can apply, but again, it is Ajopi Sannabhyatma. This verse. And maybe you can also quote 10.3, I guess. Yo mam ajam anadim cha vetti loka maheshwara asammuda samarteshu sarva pape pramuchate. He is, one who understands that I'm unborn, the beginless, the supreme lord of all the worlds. So this is also, you can quote 4.6. Yeah, I've already quoted 4.6. So we have to know when Prabhupada is quoting, it's a very Shastri quotation. We have to find out. But ignorant men consider the Lord one of the greatest personalities of the world, and thus they are misled by the illusionary energy. They think, oh, he was a great politician. Vishwanath Chakata. The Lord cannot be understood by material knowledge. By skill in jnana or yoga, nipunena, no ignorant persons, who manisha jantu, can understand the pastimes, iti, names and forms of the Lord through material mind and speech, since the Lord is beyond minds and words. He is devoid of bhakti. The jnani says that any object with name and form is illusory. That notion is indicated by the word manishi, persons with bad intelligence. The Lord broadcasts Santanvata, these names and forms, when he repeatedly appears in the world by his mercy. An example of ignorance is given. The person ignorant of drama cannot understand the names and forms indicated by the actor through theoretical gestures of the hands and poetic words using the moon or the lotus. Thus, he does not appreciate the drama and says, there is no rasa. The person in knowledge directly experiences the rasa, which pervades all his senses and hearts. Okay. Text 38. Saveda dhatu padavim parasya duranta viryasya ratangapane yo amayaya santatayanu bhajanti tatpad saroja gandham. So they cannot know these Kumanishina, they cannot know. So who can know? Who can know the Lord? That is being explained in this verse. The Lord can be understood by bhakti. Those who practice bhakti, they can know the Lord. He who worships the scent of the lotus feet of the Lord, bhajate tad pada saroja gandham. Saroja means, gandha means scent. Saroj means a lotus. Sincerely, amayaya, continuously, santataya, and with a favorable attitude, anuvritya, knows the greatness, saveda dhatu padvim parasya, of the holder of the chakra, ratangapani, the possessor of infinite prowess, duranta virasya. So, think about it, bhakti has been described here, which is sincerely, continuously, and with favorable attitude. So which other verse you can recollect which, can substantiate the same point? What type of bhakti is being discussed here? At least you tell me. What type of bhakti is being discussed? Yes, Virendra Yadav Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. No, it is Shuddha Bhakti.
How it is Shuddha Bhakti? Can you tell us?
Because it says bhajet tatpad and it is anuvritya. And
What is Anuvritya? What is Shuddha Bhakti definition? You tell me.
it's अन्याभिलाषिता शून्यम ज्ञान कर्माद्यनावृतम ज्ञान कर्माद्यनावृतम अनुकूल्यस्य Sankalpa Pratikulasya Varjanam.
Yes.
So here Anuvritta refers to Anukulasya Sankalpa,
Correct. And
Santataya it refers near continuous, and
what continuous? What is that in the Shuddha Bhakti definition?
it's a Anukulasya. It's a
Anyabhilasha shunyam jnana karmadya anavritam anukulena krishnanushilanam. So
Krishna Anusilanam.
Anushilanam, excellent. And then?
And it refers to Dhatu. It refers to Swayam Bhagavan Krishna.
Yeah, Krishna refers to directly Tad Bhajeta Tad Pad Saroj Gandham. Krishna, that is directly to the Krishna, holder of Chakra, Ratangapani. And Anya Abhilashat Shunyam Jnana Karmadya Anavritam is together Amayaya.
Maya, yes.
Yes.
Maya.
So this gives a definition of pure devotional service. Prabhupada very clearly makes a point here. He says only the pure devotees. Only the pure devotees. Only the pure devotees can know the transcendental name, form, and activities of Lord Krishna due to their being completely freed from the reactions of fruitive work and mental speculations. So what is Prabhupada quoting in the Anya Abhilashata Shunyam verse definition? What line is quoting here? Raise your hands. What line is he quoting here? Jagdishwar Prabhuji.
Disconnected.
You are disconnected or your connection is disconnected?
No, I was connected, but I was going outside. So in between, it was disconnected.
Yes. Yes, it's very important we stay connected. Reena Mataji. Yes, Reena Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. It's Gyan Karma Di Anavritam.
Jnana Karmadya Anavritam. Excellent. The pure devotees have nothing to derive as personal profit from their unalloyed service to the Lord. So this line, Reena Mataji, what does this line, which line of the pure definition, pure devotee, pure devotional service definition, which line is this Prabhupada is quoting? Yes, Reena Mataji.
Prabhuji, please can you repeat? I just not clear.
The pure devotees have nothing to derive as personal profit from their unalloyed service to the Lord. So which line?
Anya Bilashita Shunyam?
Yes, very good. They render incessant service to the Lord spontaneously without any reservation. So this one? This one? This line? Reena Mataji, this line? Are you there?
Prabhuji, Anukullena, favorable way?
And?
मुझे वापस उसका सेंटेंस सुनना पड़ेगा.
Krishnanushilanam.
Krishna.
Anukulena
Yes.
Krishnanushilanam.
Krishnanushila. Okay.
Everyone within the creation of the Lord is rendering service to the Lord directly or indirectly. No one is exception to this law of the Lord. Those who are rendering service indirectly, being forced by the illusionary agent of the Lord, are rendering service unto him unfavorably. Everyone is rendering service continuously also. But those who are rendering service unto him directly under the direction of his beloved agent are rendering service unto him favorably. Such favorable servitors are devotees of the Lord, and by the grace of the Lord, they can enter into the mysterious region of transcendence by the mercy of the Lord. But the mental speculators remain in darkness at all time. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord Himself guides the pure devotees towards the path of salvation due to their constant engagement in the loving service of the Lord in spontaneous affection. So, which verse is Prabhupada quoting here? Who will answer this? Which verse is Prabhupada quoting here? Sachin Prabhuji. Which verse is Prabhupada quoting? Shrishti Mukta.
Sorry, Prabhuji, I'm not able to answer this.
Okay, Birendra Yadav.
प्रभु ददामि बुद्धियोगं तं येन मां प्रयान्ति
तेषां सततयुक्तानां भजतां प्रीतिपूर्वकं ददामि बुद्धियोगं तं येन माम् उपयान्ति ते. So Prabhupada said one should chant the holy name Pritipurvak. Just like, how many of you are here, parents? Raise your hands. How many of you are here, parents? One, Ravikant, Vinita. Okay, Vinita Mataji. I'm just taking some experiment here. Vinita Mataji,
Yes, Prabhuji, Hare Krishna.
you have a daughter or a son, or both?
I have both, Prabhuji, a daughter and
Okay.
son.
So, whom you are more affectionate to, the daughter or the son?
Both, but
But-
very close to my daughter.
That answer. Now, when you call her name, do you struggle and battle with your mind just like when you're chanting, you're struggling Hare Krishna Hare. Do you do
No,
that?
no, Prabhuji.
You take the name very affectionately, na?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yeah, why? Because the relationship is there of
Yes.
Vatsalya Ras. So similarly, although we are not having that relationship now established with the Lord of our Rasa, but we should try to chant the name Priti Purvakam. And then slowly, when we chant with affection, with deep feelings in our heart, then the Lord in the heart will reciprocate with us.
Yes, Prabhuji.
That is the secret of entering the kingdom of God. That is the secret of entering the kingdom of God. Okay. Subrit Prabhuji, you have something to say? You have something to say? Okay. Fruitive activities and mental speculation are no qualifications for entering. Vishwanath Chakatakur. The Lord is understood by bhakti. That's it. So we are okay. I'll just take this one verse that will finish this section, and then the last section remains, which we will take it tomorrow. Then this is the conclusion. Sutta glorifies Shaunaka Rishi because they have asked questions about Krishna, whose Kritavan Kilakarmani, whose activities are transcendental, which actually liberate the soul. Atheta dhanya bhagavanta itham yad vasudeva kilalokanate kurvantya sarvatmakamatma bhavam na yatra bhuya parivartag ugraha. O men of knowledge, Bhagavanta, you're the most fortunate in this world. Atheta dhanya. Because when people concentrate their minds exclusively, Purvanti Sarvatmakam Atma Bhavam on Krishna, Yad Vasudeva, the Lord of all the worlds, Akhila Lokanate, by asking such questions, Itham, they cease painful repetition of birth. Na yatra bhuya parivartad ugra. The inquiries of the sages headed by Shonak are herewith praised by Suta Goswami on the merit of their transcendental nature. As already concluded, only the devotees of the Lord can know him to a considerable extent, and no one else can know him at all. So the devotees are perfectly cognizant of all spiritual knowledge. The personality of Godhead is the last word in absolute truth. Impersonal Brahman and localized Paramatma Supersoul are included in the knowledge of the personality of Godhead. So one who knows the personality of Godhead can automatically know all about him, his multipotencies and his expansions. So the devotees are congratulated as being all successful. Ataita Dhanya. A sent person devotee of the Lord is immune to the dreadful material miseries of repeated birth and death. Mark this. One has to become 100% pure devotee. Then only he becomes free from all kleshas. Vishwanath Chakatakur. Suta speaks to Shaunaka and the sages who were lamenting, since we are without bhakti, let us become the object of criticism. That is what is their, emotion going on in the sages, So Suta speaks. According to Vaishnava Nirakti, Sarvagya Vetti Vidyam Avidyam Sa Vacho Bhagavan. The word Bhagavan means he who knows knowledge and ignorance. Thus, in this verse, Bhagavanta means knowledgeable sages rather than great devotees, since they were not so advanced because they were karmakandis, engaged in yagyas. When persons concentrate their minds completely, sarvatmaka atma bhavam on Vasudev, there is no more repetition of birth and death, parivarta. So this completes this section. Now the last section is text 40 to 44, Srimad Bhagavatam, the literary incarnation of Krishna, which we will start our discussion tomorrow. Thank you very much. Anyone has any other further clarification? Yes, Ravikant Prabhuji. We'll take this one question and wind up, although we are little short out of time. We took 5 minutes more. Sorry for that. Yes, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. So, Prabhuji, for a long time, I was in confusion that how the material mind and the words which describing to the Lord can understand the spiritual nature of the Lord. So, these last two verses explains it very clearly, and I still this material things to understand the spiritual by bhakti. So how the same material things is converted into the spiritual when we do the Suddha Bhakti. So can you little bit elaborate, Prabhuji? That's all.
Yes, in sadhana bhakti, we engage the senses, and the senses are material. So how by engaging something in material, we are engaged in spiritual activity? That is because of the mercy of the Lord and his pure devotees. Brahmande Brahmite Kono Bhagyavan Jeev Guru Krishna Prasade Paya Bhakti Lata Bij. Because the Bhakti Lata Bij is sown in the heart, and because the Bhakti Lata Bij is there, and because you take the instructions of the spiritual master and follow those instructions and do actions, although you're using the material body and the senses which are material, but because you're acting under the dictation of the Guru Shish Parampara, those actions get gradually spiritualized. Because there is the Bhakti Lata Bij in the heart, the Bhakti Shakti in the form of Shraddha is there, sown in the heart because of the association of pure devotees. And that's why gradually the senses get spiritualized. And at the stage of bhava, when the bhakti shakti actually enters, then it is completely spiritual. And that's why sadhana bhakti is engagement of the senses. The senses are material, but gradually, the senses are getting spiritualized. Just like the iron, which is material, it is put in the fire, it starts acting like fire. Similarly, the senses are like iron, which go towards sense objects, towards Maya. But because we hear the instructions of the pure devotees, hear Krishna Katha, gradually that hearing spiritualizes, the heart, Chaito Darpan Marjanam. And that's how it gradually happens. Is it okay, Prabhuji?
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you. Thank you very much.
So thank you very, very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Grantraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Tomorrow we'll discuss the last section of this third chapter, which will answer the 6th question of the sages of Naimisharanya. Hare Krishna.